Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues. With this video, I'll be discussing my thoughts on the Big Finish Doctor Who audio story, Wirrn Dawn, starring Paul McGann as the 8th Doctor and Sheridan Smith as Lucy Miller, respectively. This was another piece sent to me by my friend from across the pond, Howard. Thank you, sir, for sending it my way, because it was really just an enjoyable piece from beginning to end. It's very much a sequel story to the Tom Baker classic, The Ark in Space, which saw the 4th Doctor, Sarah Jane, and Harry, respectively, encountering the Wirrn. And what I love about this particular story, it's another 2-episode piece, as most Big Finish seem to be in this line in any way. What I love about it is it's almost like Doctor Who meets Starship Troopers. You basically encounter this future sort of human military, and the TARDIS arrives on this spaceship in orbit of a planet that's been colonized ages past, and there is this unfolding war between the Wirrn, these giant bug alien creatures, if you will, and the humans. And basically the Doctor and Lucy come under the gun of soldiers, and there's a lot of debate going on. There's like havoc going on in space between these two factions, and the ship they're on ends up getting attacked, and for a little while they have to jump into spacesuits, and they're sort of out in space, not sure how they're going to get back to the TARDIS because it gets sucked out into space and is crashing down onto this planet and everything like that. Eventually they get brought back aboard the ship by some of the survivors, and it's just a really hectically paced but well paced and sort of edge of your seat, suspenseful story as it starts. And once you get into the second half of it, it's very much a close quarters kind of situation where the Doctor and Lucy have to split for a little while because he's investigating. He's also trying to find the TARDIS. But what the Wirrn are up to, they've concocted a way to sort of keep the Wirrn out of their little space pod that they jettisoned from the main ship, which was being destroyed in orbit, and all this kind of stuff. And of course, the Wirrn themselves, we get to see inside the minds of these creatures that have ascensions, which is very intriguing to me, in that it's a genetic sentience, something that gets passed down from generation to generation. And of course, for those unfamiliar with the Wirrn, they use living organisms, living creatures as a means by which to go through their gestation process. They'll basically, implant eggs into a living being. In this case, we hear in this story that they've done so with cows, common cows, but also, as we call back on the Ark in Space story, they had done so with humans as well. And it's fascinating because there are some of these holdovers from the colony that are soldiers currently that are seen in an almost racist light. They're called indigs, short for indigenous, but in a very poor sort of light. It's kind of like that whole thing about gingers. There's that whole sort of, I guess you could call it stigma, where people say, in a very derogatory connotation, ginge and stuff like that. So indigs is what they're known as, and there's this whole brilliant history with the two main soldiers you follow. You have an admiral who you follow who is attacked by a Wirrn, and then you have these two soldiers. One is portrayed by Colin Salmon, who, anybody who's been like a geek in the last 10 years would know this guy's face. He's been in Doctor Who previously as Dr. Moon in the Silence in the Library, Forest of the Dead 2-parter. He's been in the Resident Evil movies. He was in the short-lived series Hex, as well as on Arrow as Walter Steele, the sort of, I guess you could say father-in-law of the title character, Oliver Queen, and everything like that. And as well as Daniel Anthony, who you might most recognize, from Sarah Jane Adventures as Clyde Langer. And it's his grandfather, whom he still remembers and still wakes up freshly out of nightmares, recalling back to something his grandfather used to say about this particular, mesh with this colony and these alien Wirrn, and basically I just love the tension as it mounts. Of course, Colin Salmon's character is very gung-ho. He's very militaristic. He wants to shoot first, ask questions later, and there's a sort of situation where Lucy gets in between him firing off his weapon that makes her very much heroic in this particular story. And so once again, it's just a very intriguing, fast-paced at the start, very sort of tension mounting as it gets into the second half of the story, which then, as I say, close quarters, because you basically have Lucy and this militant soldier, as played by Colin Salmon, in this little escape pod, and they're trying to stay inside it and protect themselves from the Wirrn raving and roving on the outside. And how it all culminates is something of a surprise, I would say, because it calls back on that idea of the Wirrn having a genetic memory of sorts. And if they've had human hosts, well, what does that mean for the collision that's been happening between their species and humankind? Because you would think they might adopt human sensibilities, or at least human genetic memories and such. And that plays a large factor in the story. And it's just really riveting, enjoyable. Paul McGann is in top form. The entire cast really is in top form once again in this piece. And as I did with my previous Doctor Who audio review, I will show you the inner booklet here, which is really cool. Once again, giving a synopsis of, where the characters are. It's pretty much the same synopsis in this particular season that these stories have hailed from, but as well as giving you a little insight into the actors involved. Of course, you'll recognize Colin Salmon up top and Daniel Anthony on the bottom, and others. Essentially, more words from the writer and director, which in this case, both are Nicholas Briggs. And I really love this particular fold-out sort of poster where you see Lucy packing, which she doesn't actually do in the story, I have to say. It doesn't involve her wielding a weapon that makes her so heroic in the story, which is cool, because the Doctor, fitfully gives her accolades for what she's done by the end of the story. And once again, I highly recommend checking out Wirrn Dawn if you haven't listened to any of the Doctor Who audios, and even if you haven't seen this one yet or listened to this one yet, highly recommend you do so. So once again, Howard, thank you for sending these my way, and just a really enjoyable story, and top bill performances all the way throughout. And otherwise, I hope this video finds you well. That'll be pretty much it for me on this, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.